This video has nothing to do with Star Wars. Instead, let's talk about something that we all love even more. Let's talk about money. Now, I'm not talking about old school cash or stocks or bonds or any other form of monetary transaction that has previously existed. We are on the verge of a complete paradigm shift in how digital commerce operates. In 2021, digital sales were valued at $870 billion just in the United States. Worldwide, digital sales were estimated to be around $5 trillion. And these numbers are about to skyrocket as the worlds of tangible and digital commerce merge into one unified ecosystem. 20 years ago, every piece of media we purchased was physical. Digital games, digital movies, digital art. With few exceptions, these formats just didn't exist in the world of commerce. But today, if you go out and buy a physical Blu-ray disc, now you get a digital copy of the movie too. And that's if you still buy anything physical at all. Many movie buffs, gamers, music lovers are now buying everything digitally, as that format affords them the most flexibility in how they choose to consume said product. And right now, this is where commerce stops. The end user currently has no options after they've made their purchase. This is where such an enormous opportunity lies for both the consumer and the creator. The next stage of commerce will be centered around proof of ownership and the ability to legally resell things that you have digitally purchased. Many things we'll discuss in this video will sound confusing. The terminology is daunting, the process convoluted, but it all boils down to this one simple thesis statement. Proving digital ownership enables digital reselling. Throughout this technological paradigm shift, some of you will be left behind, just like the generation before us, where so many refuse to learn computer skills and embrace change. Some of you will jump into this transition early, garnering the immense profits that early adopters are often privy to. But all of us are heading in the same direction. It may be 5, 10, 15 years before we finally get there, but the wheels of change are turning, and in ways that few people could have predicted. As some of you already expect, this discussion revolves around cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, but more specifically, this entire video is most heavily focused on NFTs, because this is not an NFT. This is an NFT, but this isn't. The difference between these two is true digital ownership and being able to prove what you own. Let's explore a brief history of commerce, where the future of digital commerce is heading, and try to figure out how each one of us can best benefit from this transition. Hello everyone, Darth here, and welcome to another overly analytical video essay. Humanity has gone through some drastic changes, from the harnessing of the first flame, to the invention of the wheel, to the Industrial Revolution. We have seen a variety of technological innovations that utterly reshaped our society. And in modern times, arguably the single greatest transformative technology was the internet. I vividly remember my high school best friend once telling me that his greatest wish was to be able to instantly know anything, any bit of information on any topic. Fast forward 20 years to now, and every developed nation on the planet is as connected as my friend once dreamed of us being. With omnipresent cell coverage and ubiquitous Wi-Fi networks, humans are quickly trending towards being online the vast majority of our waking lives. Now, I would categorize our internet usage into three primary functions: seeking information or entertainment, seeking social engagement, and seeking an avenue for commerce. Intertwined with these core functions are the currently 3 categorized iterations of the web: 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. The first iteration of the internet, the ARPANET, was primarily developed as a faster means of sharing information, and was originally envisioned for military purposes, being funded by the US Department of Defense. It transitioned into mainly being used by academics for research purposes, until the first version of the World Wide Web was created in 1989. Now, average people were beginning to use this new magical communication system, although the 1.0 version was almost entirely one-way communication, read-only static web pages and hyperlinks that provided information but limited ability to interact with that information. In 2004, Web 2.0 went live, and normal everyday folks suddenly found themselves able to not just consume content but also contribute their own. Blogs, chat rooms, MySpace, YouTube, there was suddenly a plethora of opportunities to make your voice heard, to connect with other people all across the world. Previously insurmountable geographical borders that had separated humanity for thousands of years were surpassed nearly overnight, and humanity entered a new stage in its evolution. Nearly 20 years later, we are still in the age of Web 2.0, but the next phase of the internet is on the horizon. Web 3.0 has proven surprisingly difficult for me to accurately define, but from what I've gathered, it's generally accepted that it rests on the tenets of decentralization, utilizing blockchain technology with cryptocurrency as the main form of payment. If I were describing this change in layman's terms, I'd say that Web 1.0 was all about information, 2.0 was about engagement, and 3.0 is all about ownership. Web 2.0 completely altered how humanity engages with one another socially, and Web 3.0 will completely redefine how we trade goods and services. Millions, billions, eventually trillions of dollars will be passing hands in unprecedented ways, and for the first time since the creation of the internet and the evolution of our deepening digital culture, people will have true ownership of their digital assets. In the before times, in the long ago, our parents and grandparents were able to afford their own house, cars to pay off their bills, and pay everything in full with just one working parent. Now, we are slowly being conditioned to be renters for life. You don't own your home. Your mortgage is just a monthly payment you're paying to the bank who really owns your house. We pay the monthly installments on our cars, on our cell phones. Any significant investment we make is nothing more than us renting that item until we need to upgrade, which starts the whole payment cycle back over from the beginning. And that's not even counting the rental services we are more than aware we use: Hulu, Netflix, Disney, all of those monthly for streaming, Adobe monthly for their software, Spotify monthly for music, and if you cancel your membership, you lose it all, because we own nothing. With very few exceptions, if you've ever bought a digital product, you don't actually own it legally, you're just renting it. Music, TV shows, movies, video games. What you're actually paying for is the right to access their servers and use their content that they own. Very rarely will you have any actual rights of ownership for any digital item that you buy. Purchase a song and want to legally use it in a YouTube video? Nope, you don't actually own those rights. Ever spent $500 on getting every custom skin for a game that you no longer play? Kiss that money goodbye. Maybe you bought the entire Star Wars series as a 4K digital download, and suddenly, for some reason, you suddenly hate the franchise and want to sell them off. Nope, legally not yours to sell, not to mention, even if you could legally do it, there's no infrastructure to facilitate the transfer of ownership of the digital code. Now, if you're like me, this is probably one of those open secrets that you had always somehow missed. And learning that none of us really own what we paid good money for is extremely angering, frustrating, even demeaning. And we're not alone. There are companies working to change this paradigm, to pull the power of ownership away from big corporations and into the hands of the consumer where that power belongs. The evolution of Web 3.0 will change the entire concept of digital ownership, but getting to that point has two big hurdles: usability and incentive. In the early days of the internet, only the uber nerds could understand how to use it, and the same thing is now true with blockchain technology, which is the very foundation of Web 3.0. The infrastructure here is incredibly confusing for new users to grasp, but to break it down, I'll give three simple definitions: the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs. Think of the blockchain like it's the internet, computers talking to computers and exchanging information, only a more secure version where a multitude of computers are verifying that information. The process of verifying the information is called mining, which generates cryptocurrency, digital money used to pay for those computers that are verifying all of the data on the blockchain. So that's the distribution network, the blockchain, the digital currency, crypto. But what about the goods being traded? These are NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens. The word fungible means that it's not unique, that it's totally interchangeable with any other similar unit. If you buy 50 shares of Disney stock, there's nothing differentiating those shares from one another. Every single share the company has issued is completely identical to and indistinguishable from every other share. But the blockchain deals with non-fungible tokens, meaning that each and every item is unique and can't be replaced. For a very simple explanation, remember the Sword of a Thousand Truths from the best South Park episode ever? This episode aired all the way back in 2006, way before the concept of NFTs, and yet that's exactly what they're talking about. A single existing copy of a digital asset that you can transfer from one person to another. Every NFT has a digital code assigned to it that identifies it and proves ownership. This is why this is an NFT, but this isn't.
I don't understand.
It's a very difficult concept to grasp, that possession does not equal ownership. Since the dawn of man, if you physically held something, you owned it.
Again, we see there is nothing you can possess which I cannot take away.
The evolution of e-commerce and of purely digital products has completely thrown our entire cultural model of ownership out the window. This is why so many people scoff at the idea of people paying money for NFTs, so-called JPEG art, that any one of us can easily copy and use for free. This explanation shows the usability of NFTs. They distinguish an item from other similar items and grant you true ownership rights of that digital purchase. This topic first came to my attention after the Gamestop meme stock craze of 2021. And much to my surprise, this company wasn't at all a meme, but was in the process of an incredible turnaround as they pivot to Web3 gaming, soon launching their own NFT marketplace. And this is where the usability of this technology will really begin to shine, as creators work with distribution channels to provide digital assets that the consumer actually truly owns and can then choose to resell. Do you like this song? Exchange US dollars for crypto and you own the song. And if you find you no longer enjoy it, you can sell it. Or this TV show, if you enjoy it, buy the episode and never worry about losing your content because there's no subscription to take away your rights if you stop paying. Or how about a really rare skateboard that you could only physically acquire by buying the NFT? Each digital asset has its own set of ownership rights, and those rights are not relegated to the digital realm. The contract when selling your house or your car can be an NFT, which is admittedly an extremely cool idea, to think of the physical and digital worlds of commerce becoming so intertwined. However, I don't think the benefits of the physical are anywhere comparable to the benefits that a unified NFT digital ecosystem could bring. For example, consider this 18-second video clip currently being sold for about $77. This isn't just a cool looping video that you can resell. This is a fully rigged model that can be used in any compatible game. In the current paradigm of gaming, the characters, weapons, vehicles in one game are completely locked into that ecosystem. You can't take the armor that you earned in Destiny and use that armor for your Spartan in Halo. You can't take the detailed character design you've spent hours perfecting. Every beloved weapon, vehicle, or companion is trapped, never able to leave that world. But now the functionality of NFTs allow us to enter an era of decentralized digital ownership, where items can flow easily between games, between platforms, between players. Admittedly, I'm describing a potential future for this technology. Currently, the entire process is difficult to navigate. The terminology is very confusing, but we're still in the pioneering stages of this new digital paradigm. The games and NFT systems we see now are mere prototypes of what their seamless future versions could look like. This has been a very basic overview as to the usability of non-fungible tokens and the value that they could bring to the table, which leads us to an obvious question I'm sure many of you are already thinking. Why? Why would companies like Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, Steam all agree to this future where their content could be shared? Why would they ever dedicate the time and resources towards fundamentally changing the way that gaming systems operate? Changing technological infrastructure in order to utilize the blockchain in the manner that I've described could be incredibly expensive, requiring years of work to implement. So again, why? What is the incentive? When discussing any fundamental shift from the norm, one of the major mental roadblocks is understanding why. We are psychologically and biologically averse to change, so we need to really understand the incentive before we could really open our minds to the possibility of forcing ourselves through the difficult and uncomfortable process of change. For roughly the past decade, NFTs have had no practical purpose. They have been nothing more than movies or pictures that you could buy and sell. This is the first why that many people cannot comprehend. Why would anyone want to pay for digital collectibles? Why would anyone pay real money to say they own something that only exists on the internet? This question introduces two mental barriers to cross at once. A, the idea that only physical items hold value, and B, the idea that all of humanity only values the things that you value. First, if you struggle with this concept, yes, there is extreme value to non-physical items. An easy example, how much do you think the domain google.com is worth? Think less of it being a useless digital construct and more along the lines of, what can this be used for? Or what does this represent? You can see the value in google.com because you understand that it's used for commerce and is a huge ad revenue generator. But the name itself also holds extreme value because it represents the company. Or what about that craze of buying a star for someone as a gift and you get to name that star or that planet? Whoever you give this gift to, they They can't hold it. They have a piece of paper with their name that says you own this planet. The entire concept is that you hold it in name only. It is no different than having ownership of a digital asset. There is nothing you can physically hold when a star is named after you. But it's a cool concept. It may not be cool to you, but there is value there. It is very difficult for the Neanderthal part of our brain to grasp, but digital assets don't have to even be practical. Some of the first popular NFTs were nothing more than clip art rocks that were put on the blockchain. And within 4 years, these were selling for a minimum of $300,000. This extreme value originates with that previous question, what does it represent? And these simple, stupid rocks represent the beginning, the start of the NFT revolution, and the introduction of a brand new type of investment opportunity. Much of the hype that you see for NFTs is driven by investors, people who are buying and selling purely for profit. As an example, Gamestop ran a promotion where if you spent $200, you got this NFT, which is now selling for $366. That's a $166 profit you could have made, and this isn't even one of the popular items that drastically increases in value after release. Which brings us to the second mental barrier we must cross. Not everyone values what you value. Just because you or I may not see the value in owning a digital NFT that has no practical functionality doesn't mean there aren't 100,000 other people out there who are ecstatic to own such an item. As a quick, easy example, let's jump back to the physical world and look at baseball card collecting. This has been an immensely popular hobby spanning decades with multiple generations of fans. And I don't understand it at all. I think collecting pictures of real-life people and talking about their stats like they're game characters is extremely silly, and I see no value in these. But from their perspective, baseball card collectors think I'm ridiculous for collecting Pokemon cards. They don't understand why I would collect pictures of fake animals and talk about their stats. They think these are extremely silly and see no value in them. Now, there really are 2 points I'm trying to make here. One, lack of interest is not equivalent to lack of value. Baseball cards absolutely have value. The fact that I find them ridiculous does not change their value to— Oh my gosh, my brother kept his original booster pack sleeves! Are they glued in? How do I steal them? Many of you likely don't care about collecting, but there are people who deeply enjoy the idea that they own something they think is cool. For example, this is one of my favorite Pokemon cards ever printed. I find the artwork beautiful, inspiring, uplifting. And I could have just downloaded a picture of this and used it as my desktop background. But that possession doesn't generate the mental satisfaction that comes with ownership. I own this. The art hasn't changed from when I saw the card online, but now it means more to me, knowing it belongs to me and only me. And granted, the game is dead now, but this same art on the physical cards was used in the digital version of the game, which doesn't appeal to me at all, but that interest doesn't mean these digital cards didn't hold value to thousands and thousands of other people who did play the digital online game. So that quick lesson was just to get us in the correct mindset to accept that digital assets do hold value, even if we can't see it. Which brings us back to incentive. According to this article from GameRant, in just the first quarter of 2021, users spent $32 billion in in-game purchases. A shockingly high number to be sure, but the really interesting thing to note is that every single one of those sales was a one-time deal. Companies selling those digital items must either create new content or find new customers, because this revenue is non-recurring. But with Web 3.0, the profitability structure for e-commerce suddenly changes. Take, for example, one of my favorite games, Paladins of the Realm. In the existing business model, they sell you a $10 skin pack and that would be their max profit, based off that single $10 transaction. But if they gave the buyer the right to resell, they could add the stipulation that they, the creator, get a 10% royalty on the resale, on every resale, forever. Sure, they'll likely make slightly less money in the short term, as a small percentage of customers will wait to buy on the resale marketplace, hoping to get a cheaper price. But if we're being honest, although gamers may have the patience to tediously grind the same loot cave for hours on end, in general, gamers tend to be extremely impatient when it comes to getting their hands on a game or DLC that they've been looking forward to. In fact, a huge number of humans are so impatient, they'll always pre-order everything they're excited about, from games to Pokemon cards to controllers to DLC. For better or worse, most of us are completely obsessed with immediate gratification, not at all caring that we could just wait and get that same item in a few years at a 95% discount. It will absolutely be an argument that corporations levy against NFTs, that enabling resales will hurt their bottom line. However, I think that opinion is demonstrably false. Our fear of missing out driving us to ignore the financial advantage of patience. Let's look at an example more in depth, the Paladin's Goddess Pack, which is priced at $5. Let's say there are 5,000 players willing to shell out $5 for this item. That's 25 grand going to high res. For simplicity, let's just assume 100% profit here. By comparison, if they released it as a tradable, resellable asset, let's say that 99% of players still buy it at launch out of the released quantity of 5,000. That's 4,950 people at $5 a pop, so $24,750 profit. Let's say a third of those 4,950 people end up hating the skins and sell them for $3 each. That's about $4,900.50 in transactions total, and remember, as the creator, Hi-Rez gets 10% of each resale, so they rake in another $490.05. This brings their total profit to $25,240.05, already $240 more than they'd made without the resales. And remember, this process is indefinite. Let's say that the game lasts for 15 years before they shut down the servers, and 10% of this DLC is resold every year at an average of $2. That's 7,500 units sold over the course of 15 years for $15,000, of which Hi-Rez gets an extra $1,500 without having to lift a finger. Now, I'm using a small, relatively unknown game with small sales numbers on purpose, so it's a bit easier to make my point. After all, making an extra $1,500 off a DLC hardly seems worth the effort. But what if this were a AAA Call of Duty level title? In a 2019 survey, 87% of players reported that they buy the DLC. Also in 2019, Call of Duty Modern Warfare sold a reported 30 million copies. If 87% of those gamers then bought a $5 DLC, that's $130,500,000 for the company. Using our previous calculation of 10% resales of $2 over 15 years gives us a total of $39,150,000, of which the company makes 10%, or an extra $3.9 million of pure profit, with no additional work whatsoever on their part. And this math was just looking at one tiny $5 DLC. What about the $30, $60, $100 DLCs? The initial gamers will resell to the second wave, who will resell to the third wave, and so on, with the publisher always getting their cut. The publishers will have the option of making tens of millions of dollars extra off of every single item that they sell. And an even bigger incentive, player demand. Right now, gamers balk at the mention of NFTs because they don't understand them and think they're just another loot box type greedy publisher trick to make more money. Which, yes, it's true, it will make them more money, but it needs to be understood that the players will also stand to benefit. Remember how the creator of the item always gets their established 10% or whatever? That's because the other 90% goes to the seller. That's you or I. So instead of paying $100 for a DLC that's a sunk cost, I could recoup 90% of that cost by reselling to another player. And what makes this even better is that we're talking about a free market, where the resale prices are set according to supply and demand. Most NFTs are minted in limited runs. That's part of the draw of their value, consumers knowing there's a finite quantity. Returning to Paladins, let's say the company only minted 5,000 of these goddess packs. Remember, these are non-fungible. They can't be copied or counterfeited. There will only ever be 5,000. Now, what happens if Paladins suddenly becomes massively popular, its player base skyrocketing? Now millions of people want these original skins, and their price on the marketplace soars. Now a pack that originally retailed for $5 is being resold for hundreds, and the ones owned and sold by popular streamers could be selling for thousands. And with every single sale, gamers get money back in their pockets, and the company continues to get their cut. Right now, NFT marketplaces have little to no utility. The NFTs that people collect have no more practical utilization than the massive item vaults we hoard in our favorite games. This is my personal vault from Destiny 1. Items I've saved not because they have any actual value. Most of these aren't even particularly useful in-game, but these are mine. I own them. I earned them. And just as a completely off-the-cuff arbitrary example, if each common was worth 25 cents, each uncommon worth 50 cents, each rare worth $1, each legendary $2, an exotic $5, then at a minimum, just in the vault, for one of my 3 maxed out characters, I would have a potential value of... If this game had been blockchain based, the entire cost of the game, every DLC, every pointless add-on I bought, every dime I spent on this game, I could have gotten back. The entire at-home entertainment industry, from gaming to music to movies, can transform from totally sunk cost purchases to an investment that could leave the consumer with more than when they began. This user points out that Nintendo has tried to stop resales since the beginning because they didn't get a cut after the original sale. This is the incentive that could benefit both creator and consumer. The implementation of NFTs can open avenues of e-commerce that end up being a financial boon to everyone involved. So far, we have looked at a brief history of the web, established some basic definitions associated with this technology, and explained both the usability of NFTs and monetary incentives that both creator and consumers would gain. Next, let's explore some more specific use cases that reveal the fascinating variety of ways that NFTs could be a boon to society. Remember a minute ago when I said that if a popular streamer was reselling one of these items, it would probably garner a much higher price? I'm not just talking about them posting it on eBay and putting their name beside it. With blockchain technology, you could see every purchase and every sale, see who sold it and who bought it, going all the way back to that item's creation by the original company. Tracking ownership in this way is possible because the blockchain is an open ledger, and every purchase, sale, seller, and buyer is publicly identifiable, at least by their unique wallet code. This is mine. Think of it like your social security number or your home address, a totally unique identifier and one that's fairly anonymous. For example, I don't know who lives at 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia, but anyone could pull up Google Maps and track what cars are coming and going from that address. You could pull up Trello and see how much that house is worth. But since I'm not totally sure how accurate this comparison is, let's just look at my page again. Here you can see how much ETH I've got in my account, and you can see that I have 6 transactions, 1 incoming from Coinbase, the rest outgoing to Loopring and ENS registration. You can see analytics of my transactions, even download a CSV report, so you would know, for example, how I'm spending your donations towards the channel. The blockchain is all about public information. You could even see the message my buddy sent me when he originally registered this page in my name. Now I could practically feel half of you noping out right now. This level of detail shown publicly undoubtedly feels like an invasion of privacy, but arguably, utter transparency is an incredibly worthwhile objective when it comes to commerce. We'll touch more on that topic in a later section. Returning to the use case at hand, we were talking about popular streamers selling their assets. And since buyer, seller, price, quantity, since everything is publicly available, we find 2 massive financial opportunities. The first I've already mentioned as celebrity influence. Let's assume that this channel blows up and I end up with 1 million subscribers. Now that I've made my wallet address public, you could prove if you bought something from me, which increases its value as my channel's popularity increases. And what if Pokimane, Ninja, Markiplier, PewDiePie were selling an item? Can you imagine how much something would resell for if you could definitively prove it was owned by one of them? Consider how big the competitive gaming industry is getting. $1.3 billion in 2022 and consistently growing. These esports arenas are massive attractions, with 530 million viewers in 2022. These competitors are celebrities with devout followings. Utilizing non-fungible tokens, the winners of this tournament could auction off the actual gun they won the championship with. Each weapon, each skin, each character will have its own uniquely verifiable code, and an entirely new market of commerce will develop as fans race to collect the digital assets of the most notable players. Beyond the notoriety of the original owner, we also have to consider the unique popularity of the item itself. Consider this alternate timeline. The year is 2025, and Destiny 1 has just been released. The entire gaming world has been losing their minds as this is one of the most hyped, anticipated video games of all time. It's built on the blockchain, so every skin, weapon, sparrow, every single item that you can earn is something you legally own and can sell to other players. Average players are pulling in hundreds of dollars just selling off duplicate items they would otherwise delete. The player base grows massive, and praise the traveler, the first raid is finally released. The Vault of Glass takes the gaming world by storm, as players rush to be the first to defeat Antheon and claim the now literal goldmine of tradable assets that no one else in the entire game yet owns. Finally, after hundreds of teams compete for dozens of hours straight, someone finally beats the raid. Everyone is euphoric over the victory and gushing over their loot, while the chat goes crazy. Then the RNG gods spit out something new. The first ever Vex Mythoclast, a rare exotic gun that would come to be known as one of the most iconic weapons Destiny would ever have. Now consider all we've learned, because this is fascinating. This gun was minted on the blockchain and is non-fungible. It can't be copied. This gun, earned by this player, is the very first Vex Mythoclast ever minted, which you can confirm by looking at its code. Sure, if Robert Downey Jr. was a huge gamer and sold his Vex, its value would be enormously inflated because of who owned it. But how much would the very first ever Vex be worth? Or another example, this is the CGI model of the Infinity Gauntlet. This is what Thanos wore in his iconic role. What if Marvel had minted this model as a digital asset on the blockchain? You could actually legally own the exact same 3D model that was used in some of the most beloved films of all time. Or for a more esoteric, real-life example, popular hip-hop group the Wu-Tang Clan produced a final secret album, only created one single recording, and it was never duplicated and never available for streaming. In 2021, a group working in the blockchain space purchased that recording. Now, if they were to mint a limited run of 10,000 copies as NFTs and put them up for sale, how much would the market decide that they're worth? NFTs have the possibility of holding extreme value, not just because of the notoriety of the creator, not just because of a famous previous owner, but also because the digital assets themselves can have tremendous value due to rarity or to being a cultural icon. As we continue our exploration of the usefulness of NFTs, let's discuss the amazing benefits to creators. No matter what vertical you look at, music, movies, gaming, novels, the distributor nearly always holds all the cards. YouTube controls my ad revenue, and pretty much no content creator, no matter how big, has a say in the matter. Almost every musician has to take whatever deal the label will give them. Novelists have little to no influence over their publishers. If you've been paying attention to Web3, one of the slogans you'll frequently see related to NFTs is the phrase, "power to the creators." We are entering an era of self-publishing that will usher in a slew of new content creators, who for the first time ever will truly be in charge of how their own content is sold to the public. For instance, I only have ownership rights of resale, not commercial rights, so I can't legally play the entire song in this video, but that contract is different for every digital asset. For instance, let's say I buy this cyberclone NFT. These creators have not only granted me the ownership rights to resell, I could also download the texture pack and rigged skeleton and use this model in my artwork, or movie or video game, which they show off in the upcoming Web3 game called Curaverse. In fact, speaking of Curaverse, they've said they can implement a multitude of models as playable characters in this game. They've even developed a method of taking a 2D image and converting it into 3D playable characters. Check this out. So Gamestop has this side-scroller called Buck the Bunny, which is kind of addictive considering its simplicity. Anyways, using some kind of computer magic, those game assets are now fully rigged 3D models. They're playable characters in Curaverse. Like, as far as I could tell, this isn't a crossover like gamers are used to, where they totally recreate the aesthetics of assets. This is literally importing the files from one game to use in another. And this is just touching on the utility that will be coming in the future. Quoting from this AMA with Protocol Gemini, cyberclones give you access to many different file types, including 3D, game-ready, rigged and optimized files on our website. Any game or metaverse that allows FBX importing automatically will allow you to import your avatar, but we have them integrated and playable in games like Curaverse, VRChat, FF4, Boneworks, and with more coming soon. citing from the Cybercrew About section on their YouTube page, quote, "We believe in a future where gamers own their skins, weapons, and gear. Why shouldn't gamers be able to utilize the equipment that they bought in a different game or environment? We believe that developers should have the freedom to focus more on their world or project that they are working on. Let us handle the creation of high-quality 3D, fully rigged and ready assets that come with free commercial use for owners. We believe that artists should have the flexibility to customize our assets to their own liking. This is why we will offer many file-type downloads for asset owners once our website is live. We believe that everyone should own your own assets. For too long, companies have sold these types of assets and avatars and centralized them to their own platforms. It is time for a decentralized world of true ownership. Power to the creators, power to the players." I think within a few short years, when this technology becomes more mainstream, we'll have the ability to create our own original characters and play as those characters in all our favorite video games. And when you get bored with that character, sell it off and use the money to buy something new. And every time your creation is sold, you get your cut. Again and again and again, the creator gets paid. And they're not locked into any fixed percentage by some abusive distributor. The creator writes their own terms. So if they want 90% royalties, they can sell for 90% royalties. Although, like I said earlier, we're talking about a free market that will be infinitely more competitive than anything we've previously experienced. So I am curious to see what royalty percentage will be considered quote-unquote realistic, and what will be looked down upon as price gouging. The commercial possibilities that will arise out of this technological shift may be truly endless. You could buy an actual plot of land in Minecraft, spend months building something amazing, and then legally sell that land and everything on it. You had fun, built something cool, and then sold it for a profit, with next to no overhead besides your time. In Counter-Strike, players can already buy and sell items for real cash. Anyone can build their own game and earn money in Roblox. Path of Exile, Elder Scrolls, there are already games out there that have thriving real-life money economies, and none of them are gaining the benefits of a Web 3.0 digital marketplace. Current blockchain-based games like Undead Blocks, Curaverse, and Gods Unchained are the very beginning of a brand new era where gamers will own what they purchased. This digital commerce paradigm shift will not just be affecting the gaming world, as I fully expect to see physical shopping adapt to this technology as well. Right now, virtual reality is mostly seen as a gimmick, but the day is not far off when the tools will become so immersive that our entire culture surges into the metaverse for the next generation of entertainment. And along with our attention comes our money. You could shop for clothes in virtual reality, try them on your avatar who looks like you with your exact body scanned measurements. Do your twirls in a virtual mirror to see how you look and then buy that sweater in the metaverse. A few days later, you get your package at the door and it's the sweater you just bought. I'm sure many of you are asking, how's that any different than normal online shopping? And again, the purpose here is verifying ownership. This sweater that your avatar tried on is assigned this QR code, which links back to the NFT that your avatar bought in the metaverse. For all intensive purposes, these are the exact same sweater. And for the first time ever, you will easily be able to tell which of your party guests left their sweater on the back of your couch. If you and your brother own the same type of coat, just scan the QR code to see whose is whose. Ownership of everything will be traceable. For a while now, NFT collections have been a bit of a joke. People keep their digital collections in digital vaults, and these digital assets, in general, have no actual utility. They're just things people enjoy looking at and enjoy saying that they own. But consider the possible future I've described. Your personal NFT vault would be a digital collection of every physical item you've ever purchased. You have the NFT of your car to prove you own your car, of your house to prove you own your house. You can look back through your digital wardrobe and see every piece of clothing you've bought and try it on again, color matching your getup in VR, knowing you have the same items sitting in your closet. And as we're extrapolating possibilities, I predict that reselling becomes even easier. eBay, Craigslist, Mercari, none of these sites are needed anymore when you could just resell the item on the same NFT marketplace where you purchased it. Post the NFT of the physical item as being for sale, pass the digital rights onto the buyer, and mail them the physical item. The software could automatically detect how many times this item has been resold and put that info in the title, so no secondary used marketplace is needed. You just sort by either new or used. And I'm guessing there will be some kind of QR scanning system to prevent fraud. The seller scans the QR code when they ship the item, and the buyer scans the code when they receive the item, with those transactions logged on the blockchain for proof of transfer of physical ownership. The evolution of physical shopping has been interesting to observe, with the dominating rise of Amazon over the past decade utterly redefining e-commerce, as retailers had to either toe the line and join the conglomerate or attempt to compete. However, in recent years, this industry leader has become a vast wasteland of cheap, low-quality ripoffs that break quickly and hold no lasting value. While Amazon is the uncontested behemoth in the digital commerce industry, it's ironically also slowly driving its users towards a new paradigm, one where we mandate quality products that are proven to be authentic. Along with the meteoric rise of e-commerce, we've also seen a concurrent rise of associated crime. The profitability of counterfeiting nearly rivaling that of legitimate commerce. This number sounds utterly unbelievable, but the counterfeit sneaker market was estimated at $450 billion. And that's just the market for fake shoes. There's a multi-trillion-dollar market in manufacturing counterfeit goods, which means if the real manufacturers can be shown the value of authenticating goods utilizing the blockchain, they could make billions more in revenue every year for comparatively little work. Let's briefly return to the value analysis and remember how important the term non-fungible is. If I want to sell you this skin or this gun, with Web 3.0 you can check to be sure it's authentic. Just think about the practical applications here. For some reason, shoes appear to be the #1 most counterfeited product, so let's use Nike as an example. Let's say you're out walking and you see a dude set up on the street selling what he says are genuine Nike shoes, brand new. Well, he looks sketchy to you, so you pull out your phone and scan the QR code printed on the inside of the shoe's tongue. This takes you to Etherscan, which shows when this exact shoe was minted by Nike. Yes, criminals will find innovative ways to trick people, and yes, this technology is currently quite complicated. So in the early years, people will fall for a lot of scams. But blockchain-based technology is notoriously difficult to hack. In fact, most so-called hacks that you hear about on the news were because the user did something stupid and allowed themselves to be scammed. With just a little bit of knowledge, end users and creators alike will benefit from this technology, as counterfeiters can no longer operate with ambiguity. From houses to cars to phones to watches, every single manufactured product can suddenly be authenticated as being the genuine article. bringing possibly trillions of dollars out of the hands of criminals. Now, it's fairly obvious that I'm a huge proponent of the promise that this new technology is offering. But I'll admit that there's a long and arduous road ahead before mass utilization can happen. These are still super early days for blockchain-based technology, and the comparison to the Wild Wild West couldn't be more accurate. You could get lucky and strike it rich, while the guy next to you picks the wrong hill to mine and loses everything. The company you believed in deeply could easily turn out to be a complete fraud, panhandling you from the very beginning. Scams will run rampant, and everyday users will struggle to understand this new terminology that the tech nerds seem to inherently grasp, but to us just sounds like Klingon. As I said, right now this stuff is massively confusing and needlessly convoluted, and it's because of this immense education gap that so many people are completely antagonistic towards NFTs, for no other reason than they don't understand them. I'll bet when asked the question, what is an NFT? 9 out of 10 people would respond, it's a JPEG of a monkey that idiots pay too much money for. And across the board, people have mistakenly come to believe that all NFTs are JPEGs, simply because the very first NFTs were JPEGs. The second thing those uninformed frequently say is, I can just screenshot or save it, why would anyone pay money for that? This is a fascinating argument in my eyes, as it completely skips over the entire concept of ownership that we've spent so much time discussing. You can take a picture of the Mona Lisa, that doesn't mean you own the Mona Lisa. Consider award-winning photographs. Say the artist had minted all these as NFTs. Yes, you could still right-click and save that image, but that's not ownership, that's theft. It's, admittedly, probably a more minor crime that many of us are probably guilty of. We see a picture we like, so we save it and throw it up as a desktop background so we get to look at it. This practice has become so commonplace in our minds that we've completely repressed the fact that we are taking something that does not belong to us. The fact that we could download something, save something, use something, that possession does not equate ownership. If you pirate a movie or video game, you know you stole it. You know you don't legally own it. Or a more tangible example, if I get a copy of your driver's license or your deed to your house, that doesn't make me you. That doesn't mean I legally own your home. If I steal your car, I don't own your car. NFTs are all about proving ownership, and it is this verification of ownership that proves an item's worth. And lastly, in this video, I'm not even addressing a fraction of the problems everyone involved will face in attempting to implement Web 3.0. This script is roughly 25 pages long, and I'm sure I could do one equally as long showing all the scary, harmful ways this tech could be twisted to hurt the consumer, or how it could just straight up fail to succeed. But my primary goal here was to lay out the promise that I see, to help show the benefits, because problems will show up, and without both businesses and consumers excited about this technology's potential, it will be much, much more difficult to work through all of the hurdles that we are very likely to face. This entire video has involved a lot of theorizing as to how this technology will develop and be successfully integrated into our society. Humanity's simple world of hunting, gathering, and trading has now become one dominated by ones and zeros, as the worlds of digital and physical commerce merge, creating a brand new model of shopping purchasing, and authenticating ownership. And what is especially interesting is that Web 3.0 isn't just some fringe dream a handful of nerds are working towards. According to this article, $3.4 billion have been invested into this technology over the past several years. Although, according to this speech and this tweet from Robbie at ImmutableX,
which is in the last 3 years, more than $15 billion has been invested into the category of Web3 gaming.
Exact numbers aside, big corporations are not throwing this amount of money around on a whim.
For context, this is one of the most invested in nascent tech categories in history. It is the most invested in category of crypto, and it is all focused on how can we take in-game items and games and make them truly ownable and interoperable and open ecosystems.
Assuming events stay their course, within a few short years, NFTs will absolutely redefine the entire gaming industry. And that may not be the end of the story.
If money is evil, then that building is hell.
The stock market is a $27.7 trillion industry. And do you know what many would define as its single biggest problem? An unfathomable amount of all existing shares in every single company are not real.
Stock market's rigged. The United States stock market, the most iconic market in global capitalism, is rigged.
By whom?
By a combination of the stock exchanges, the big Wall Street banks, and high-frequency traders.
Who are the victims?
Everybody who has an investment in the stock market.
I would, illegally naked short sell stocks every day. Every day. And the bank did not care. All the prime lenders, they all do it consistently.
Normally, when big corporations or hedge funds or even household investors like you or I want to sell a stock we don't own, we borrow the stock from someone who does own it, promising to pay them back in addition to paying interest on the borrow. But with naked shorting, there's no borrow. You could literally sell stocks you don't have physical or even digital possession of.
Here's the rub, folks. Naked shorting was made illegal after the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So the big question is, why is this still happening?
Naked shorting, simple version, is a seller sells stock that they don't have to a buyer who sees it in their account electronically, but it hasn't been delivered. And the buyer gives the seller money for ultimately nothing that was delivered. The simple version would be if you and I, Charles, took our car title and Xeroxed it 100 times and sold it to 100 people, and each of them paid us cash, but we only had one car. That would be a good analogy to what naked short selling is. In Texas, simple version, we call that stealing.
So is that going on? Well, 3 years ago, the SEC was saying this is a myth, this isn't a myth. They finally faced enough public pressure that they passed a very tepid Regulation Show. And it said that they were going to start disclosing the names of companies that are seeing excessive numbers of these phantom shares in their stock. And they actually said on their website, the SEC website actually said, we have to grandfather, that is, we have to forgive all the phantom shares that are already in the system because we're afraid of the volatility that might result from large pre-existing open positions. Now that's bizarre because a month or a year earlier, they'd been saying this isn't going on, it's a myth, it's all wacky. And then they came out and said, well, okay, we're going to try to do something about it, but we have to forgive all that's in the system because if we don't, it's going to crack the system.
still no mention of the fact that for a not insignificant percent of the trades where you bought shares, your broker, in fact, did not get shares to put in your account on the day they took your money.
First of all of this nonsense, all of this noise, all of this whining by Wall Street, it's making me sick. 140% of GameStop was short. I didn't hear one person on TV complaining about Wall Street trying to crush GameStop. 140% short. You can't allow Wall Street to short 75% of a stock and nobody says anything. Crush these companies into the dirt, and then when the individual investor makes money, everyone's up in arms. I have a kid who bought a house. He made $50,000 and bought a house. If they want to change the rules of the game now because the general public is making money after decades of the shorts crushing thousands of stocks into the dirt. I have watched stocks being crushed completely to zero, and no one ever whispered anything because those stocks didn't have Wall Street sponsorship. The shorts have had their way with the market for decades. So I am thrilled. If you are going to try to destroy a company by shorting 140% of its stock, you have to accept the fact that individual investors are playing the same game that you're playing and now you're losing.
Eventually, books need to be balanced and naked shorts need to be closed, assuming the company can't be driven out of business, which is these short sellers' ultimate goal. Sometimes the seller ends up caught having to pony up for those naked shorts, but they've illegally sold so much fake stock, they don't have enough money to pay off their debt. This is called a failure to deliver. Consider Apple one of the biggest, strongest companies on the planet, and just look at the amount of their FTDs. According to this data from Chart Exchange, Apple averages nearly 44,000 failure to delivers every single day. In the first 2 weeks of July 2019, over 914 million shares, valued at over $17 billion, failed to deliver in settlement from the clearinghouse. $17 billion went into these people's pockets for selling phantom shares that literally did not exist.
The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporation.
And this problem has only grown with time, as evidenced here with $45 billion sold, not yet purchased. How can you make $45 billion selling something that you don't own? This gentleman bought up every single available share of this company, Global Links. He owned everything available. And then within 2 days,
there were no shares available to be borrowed, and yet in 2 days there were over 50 million shares traded.
I was absolutely blown away.
At least 50 million fake shares proven in just this one single company. And when a massive calamity strikes, like back in 2008, who do you think ends up paying? These leeches operating in the dark got away scot-free, bailed out by the government, while average working people saw their 401ks drop by a combined $2.7 trillion.
You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything.
Now, I'm sure some of you are confused as to why I'm now focused on the stock market, as 20 minutes ago we were nerding out over video games. And that may be because you're picturing old Wall Street, frequently shown in films. Frantic shouting, bells ringing, physical paper passing from seller to buyer. But for nearly the past 30 years, physical stocks have been antiquated, with electronic trading being the norm. Your 401k, your life savings, is a digital asset. And you own those shares exactly as much as you own this video game. You don't. I paid for this, but Xbox owns it, and Xbox can take it away whenever they want to. And you don't even have to get online to read the user agreement, just look at the back. Activision makes no guarantee regarding the availability of online play or features, and may modify or discontinue online services at its discretion without notice, including, for example, ceasing online services for economic reasons due to a limited number of players continuing to make use of the service over time. This problem regarding ownership of digital assets is not relegated to the music or film or gaming industries, and is not relegated to the rich. This all affects you. You don't really own any digital item you've bought. You don't own your music or movies or video games, and you also don't own the digital shares in your 401k. When you buy shares from a broker like Fidelity, Vanguard, E-Trade, they take your money and add the shares to your account. But in the eyes of the DTCC, your broker is the owner, with your shares held in street name, meaning your broker's name, not officially held in your name. And because these shares are technically owned by your broker and not you, they have the right to do whatever they want to. CMKM was a Canadian company where holders had their shares straight up deleted by their broker. If you sit and read the terms and conditions from any major broker, you're almost certain to discover that you do not own any of your stock, your broker does. And what they tell you you own might not even be real. After all, what is their incentive to actually purchase the stock you wanted to buy when they could just tell you you've got those shares in your account? You want to sell those quote-unquote shares that you think you own, and the broker says fine, and they put the money into your account. There is nothing forcing them to actually buy the shares, and no backstops to prove that the shares they show you have are real. This is why the quote-unquote meme stock craze of 2021 was such a big deal, and the criminal tactics we have reviewed explain exactly why. Have you ever heard of a stock being turned off? Say you want to buy Disney stock and your broker flat out tells you no? That's exactly what happened. And this isn't just a bunch of internet nerds upset the price of Gamestop wasn't allowed to keep going up. This was almost the destruction of everything.
Just start with this simple question. How close we were to this system breaking, something failing? How close were we, Thomas?
We were frighteningly close. I was so scared, I can't tell you how scared I was.
Well, Thomas, what were you scared about? What does failure look like? You said we came close to breaking. What were you scared of? What did you think was going to happen?
I was scared of a domino bankruptcy. I mean, I tell you, the rules require the long brokers to go into the market and buy the shares at whatever price. So that drove the shares up to $480. If the call options had been exercised, the shorts would have had to deliver 270 million shares, while only 50 million shares existed. So as the rules are today, the long broker has to, if he can't get the shares, he has to go into the market and buy the shares at whatever the price is. So that could have pushed the price further up into the thousands. When that happens, obviously the shorts cannot pay up. They default on the brokers default on the clearinghouse, and the whole thing is a huge mess that's impossible to untangle.
According to the SEC's own internal report, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the entire stock market nearly imploded because of one single security. Over the past few years, if you've seen an unusual public push for transparency in the markets, for the SEC to actually be held accountable, this is why. Because a bunch of internet nerds buying a video game company's stock should not in turn destroy the entire stock market. It's entirely possible that your 401k isn't real. And even scarier, it's possible that everyone in America's retirement savings isn't real. The only way to absolutely guarantee that you actually own the stock you have purchased is to have those shares directly registered in your name with the company's official transfer agent. Officially registering in your name transfers the ownership of the shares from your broker to you, which moves those shares out of the normal stock market. They can't be borrowed, can't be loaned out, can't be used as locates for short sales. They're held in your name with only you having those ownership rights. The stock market is the backbone of the American economy. And despite how romanticized Wall Street is in our media, underneath the glamour, it is an utter fraud. And germane to this discussion, it is a fraud that can only exist because every single share is not an NFT that's verifiably authenticated on the blockchain. A real NFT can't be copied and can't be faked. The blockchain network of computers authenticates the digital code, and the digital code belongs to the one person who purchased it. This is why Computershare, one of the biggest transfer agents in the world, has already invested in blockchain-based digital securities. This is why a Web3 company called Loopring created the technology and owns the patent for a tokenized stock market exchange. Because a stock market that trades openly on the blockchain can't be manipulated as easily as what we've examined here. And once your eyes are opened to the illegality and instability of the stock market, it's a short trip to wonder, what exactly is my bank doing with my money? And from what I could tell, the answer seems to be gambling with it. Just 3 banks failing this year has eclipsed the amount of money that banks lost in the crisis of 2008. It would appear that banks are just as trustworthy with our money as the hedge funds who illegally sold us billions of dollars of stock that didn't exist. And even worse, it would appear that the US government is aware of these issues and would rather keep dispensing bailouts to their rich patrons than deal with the underlying problems. This is why one of Loopring's biggest catchphrases is "be your own bank." These companies are not just working towards a renaissance in the gaming world. They are trying to build the infrastructure to completely revolutionize the banking and investment world as we know it, to stop these financial predators' parasitic exploitation of the working class. Quoting Byron at Loopring, "Many don't yet fully comprehend what's happening with crypto. We're separating money and state. This will be as big of a revolution as the separation of church and state in the 18th century. Hedge funds and market makers control the stock market, and the people suffer. Banks control our money, and the people suffer. We've been conditioned to rent instead of own, taught that we have to buy with no legal option to resell, convinced that living paycheck to paycheck is acceptable, and conned into thinking of credit card debt as free money."
She's short 567. What would you suggest she do? I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Would you recommend that she take out a JP Morgan Chase credit card and run a deficit?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Would you recommend that she overdraft at your bank and be charged overdraft fees?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
If money is evil, then that building is hell. This is the most obnoxious group of money-hungry, low IQ, high energy, jackrabbit, wannabe, big-time, small-time, shit-talking, bothersome, irritating bunch of motherfuckers I have ever had to endure.
Immutable X is building the future of Web3 gaming, where all games will be able to share digital assets that can be bought and sold on a single marketplace. They are building game assets that are not locked to a single game, so you could use your digital property legally however you would like. For the first time, you will truly own your digital assets. For the first time, creators will have possibilities only the big companies had access to. And if we are very lucky, we will have true ownership of our investments and confidence that we control our savings account instead of a bank that can gamble it all away. You may have noticed that I've mentioned the Gamestop marketplace several times. As a disclaimer, I am deeply invested with this company, but I want to be clear that this video isn't intended to pump that investment. This work stems from a desire to teach, to show people how the world is changing and how you can prepare yourself to better adapt to that change. If you do decide to invest in any of the companies I've mentioned here, be sure to do your own research. I've shown you how blatantly manipulated these financial institutions are, so make sure you really understand what you're getting into and the substantial risk involved wherever you decide to keep your hard-earned capital. If you would like to learn more about what this fan base of individual household investors have uncovered regarding corruption in the stock market, the Reddit community has developed an extensive knowledge base that extremely dedicated members have organized into easily digestible PDF flipbook format. This company's fan base is unbelievably enthusiastic and are one of the primary reasons that I remain so optimistic about this company's future and about the future of Web3 gaming and NFTs. Because change is difficult and only strong proponents for change can push it to happen. As I said before, this is still early days for this entire landscape. New developments and partnerships are now coming out almost too quickly for me to keep up with. As I'm finishing up writing this script, the new metagates have dropped. Think about it like a digital space where you could organize and display your digital assets. Our main focus is cross-platform interoperability and easy, no-code tools to empower creators and artists. When multiplayer functionality comes out, the fun and community aspects will be truly special. What I'm inferring from this statement is a future where I see us logging online and jumping into your metagate so you can party up with your friends. Then you grab whatever NFTs you want to use that day and jump into whichever game your group wants to play. But how far away is that possible future? Robbie at Immutable has just announced another $150 million raised for Web3 games, and a world-class development team and their partnership with Phoenix Games. The same day, GameStop announced a new partnership with the Telos Foundation and the creation of Gamestop Player, a game launcher for Web3 gaming. And yes, I'm repeating myself once again, but this is much bigger than Web3 gaming. Quote, "As the world reimagines our traditional finance systems, NFTs are set to play a significant role in the future of our economies." With all of these amazing companies working together to achieve the same goal of true digital ownership, we could very likely be entering not just a new future for gaming, but the start of a renaissance encompassing all digital commerce. In the past 30 days, from June 3rd, 2023, the NFT marketplace has brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, which Sounds impressive until you compare it against the market's leading NFT marketplace, OpenSea, who as of December 10, 2022, had collected $1.8 billion just in fees. There are already billions of dollars being transferred just in collectible digital assets that for the most part have no actual operable utility. Imagine shopping for cars in VR, doing tours of houses, knowing that when you buy the NFT online, you get the physical thing too. There is so much more to this story that I could tell, but I've made an effort to try to stick to the highlights and explain what I see happening as simply as possible. If you'd like to watch more about the still evolving GameStop saga, there's a recently released fan-created documentary called Apes Together Strong, which you can find on Vimeo. Even if my personal investments go to zero, even if GameStop fails and another company takes up where they left off, I'm extremely excited for the future that Web 3.0 offers. Right now, we the people own nothing, and it's time that changed. Power to the players, power to the creators, power to the collectors, power to the people.